Crystal Wade here with Let's Wade In. So glad you could join us today. We've been talking about a teenager that found himself in a very hard and lonely place, really as the slave of a foreign king for 6 years in a foreign country. And this king, by the way, practiced witchcraft, while our teenager himself is a Christian. So he found himself for 6 years feeding pigs and doing other jobs, and he was alone in the fields with no family and no friends. But he did have the Father. And during those 6 years, he depended on the Father, and he trusted the Father, and he prayed to the Father, and he developed his friendship with the Father. And he needed to have this friendship with the Father because Ireland was filled with dark places at the time. And so our teenager learned the difference between the Father and his holy angels and between darkness. It was very clear to see the difference, especially as he was taking that time in the fields, not to grow bitter in that hard and lonely place, but to take advantage of who was with him in the fields, which was the Father. And so the Father had sent him angels at different times to give him different messages. And one time, one of the Father's angels came and said to the teenager, "Your ship, you will soon be leaving this nation." And then he came back later and he said, "Your ship is ready." And so our teenager, who's now 22, had learned the voice of the Father and had learned when the Father was sending him angelic messengers. And so he listened to the voice of that angel that the Father had sent him, and he escaped from that farm where he had been held as a slave for 6 years. And he traveled the long journey home, and the Father protected him all through that journey. It was very long and hard. And when he arrived home, he found that his parents had died. And while that was sad, he did have other relatives who invited him in. And now he was home, and he was a young man, and his life lay before him. And so as he was back in Roman Britain, he's settling in. And do you know what happened? The same angel who the Father had sent him in Ireland for his escape came to him and gave him a message and said, "The Father has called you to be an apostle to Ireland." And so he's thinking, wow, that's just where I left. And then later the angel came back, and let me read you exactly what he said. He said, "You are commanded by God to go to Ireland to strengthen their faith and belief, and that you may bring the Irish by the net of the gospel to the harbor of life." And so the place that he was formerly a slave, that the Father had helped him escape, he now is being called to go back there and bring the gospel. And so he thinks, well, all right, I want to do this right. I want to have training. I want to have backup. And so he starts heading down to the leadership, maybe even possibly to Rome, to get backing, when the angels had grabbed hold of him with the message and said, "No, the Father has called you to go back to Ireland." So he had to adjust his schedule and just took a few friends and went back to Ireland. And it was a good thing, a very good thing, that he had learned the Father's voice and learned to follow the Father's directions and make adjustments to his own schedule when the Father was directing him. Because when he got back to Ireland, he was met with a reception, but it may not have been the best reception. So stay tuned for the rest of the story. Remember, go with God and go for the gold.